Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bass, and today we are talking pond fishing. Specifically about the top baits that were ever made for fishing in ponds and how to fish these baits so that you can catch more fish. These days, Tim and I get to spend a lot of our time out on the bass boat. But it hasn't always been that way. Tim and I both grew up on ponds. We were fishing ponds, creeks, rivers, all sorts of little backwater places as we grew up. And even today, yes, we are on a bass boat a lot, but we're also on the jet boat, the kayaks, shore fishing, wading. We go all over and do whatever it takes to catch fish. A lot of people focus away from pond fishing. They talk a lot about tournaments, fishing big water, and we just want to take a minute to stop and focus entirely on the guy who is fishing ponds, because where you're fishing is incredibly diverse and it does take some unique approaches. And there are key baits that no matter where you are or what type of pond you're on will help you catch more fish. Now, granted, with that said, there are differences, right? One guy's got a pond that's dirt shallow and full of grass, and it might be big. The next guy's got a pond that's just a little tiny canyon. The next guy's got a pond that's enormous but has no grass at all. So obviously you need some different approaches, and we're not going to throw all of you into the same bucket. But with that said, there are key baits. So today I've got the 5 most popular, or more important than popular, is most reliable, no matter which type of pond you are on. These are baits that you can trust to consistently catch fish. And then I'm going to give you the little nuances, the little changes that we make to adapt them to different situations. So number 1 is going to be a Senko. Okay, now I've got 2 moving baits, well, 3 soft baits, and then 2 other options. All 3 soft baits will take the exact same hook. We're not trying to break the bank here, right? We're trying to bass fish on a budget, but still have the right gear to get the job done. If you run into a great big one in a pond, you don't want to lose that fish because somebody told you to use junk gear. So a 4/0 wide gap hook is going to help you with all 3 of these soft baits. The first one is a Senko. Now, you can also use a 3/0 wide gap hook. If I were only rigging the Senko, a 3/0 would be a better option. But because I'm going to use it for all the above, a 4/0 is the better option. But you can use either one. A 5-inch Yamamoto Senko. This color is green pumpkin, black flake. This bait, Texas rigged, weightless. So I take this hook here, and this is just the owner all-purpose soft bait hook. Again, all-purpose, very universal. 4/0 hook, and then I just skin hook. That bait right there can be fished in any pond, any lake, any river, anywhere in the country, and it will produce bites. It gets bit by bass. That color, that size, everything is amazing. Now, if your pond is dirt shallow, or if you want to save a little more money, you can go to a Yum Dinger. The Yum Dinger is a little more rigid. It does not have that same action. Okay, the Senko stands out from all the others. The action is unbelievable. But the Yum Dinger is a little more cost effective. It's a little more rigid, but it sinks slower. So if you've got a really shallow pond, or you only have a little bit of room over the grass, the Yum Dinger can be a better option. But 9 times out of 10, Yamamoto Senko, green pumpkin, black flake, you are in business. Now, I've got a bunch of fish blowing up over here. My goodness, they're going crazy. The second bait is a Super Fluke. This is the Zoom Super Fluke. And again, we're not brand loyal or anything else. This is all sorts of different baits. These are just the specific baits that consistently get the job done. So the Zoom Fluke is, you rig it the same way. And you could actually fish it like a Senko. You could throw it out and just let it fall. It's got a nice shimmy on the way down. But I prefer to use it as a do-everything bait. Fish it like a jerk bait, fish it like a topwater, let it fall on the edges of cover. It's just incredibly universal. This is albino. This is a great color option. There's a couple others. Tennessee shad is more of a neutral, a little more tan. So you can also use like a watermelon seed if you got a lot of bluegill in your pond. But one of those three colors, albino, Tennessee shad, or watermelon seed, I mean, they're gonna catch them. That bait is so deadly. You can fish it fast where it's jumping out of the water like a topwater. You can slow it down where it's a jerk bait, ripping subsurface. Or you can just throw it up against cover and just let it fall, and it has a nice little shimmy and rock on the way down. If I'm only using it to let it slow fall, the Senko is a much, much better option. But if I'm just trying to adapt to the situation, it will work. Last but not least, number 3, and it's not last, but last of the soft baits here. Number 3 is going to be a Texas rig. Now, when I say Texas rig, that's like, I'm just gonna tell you the truth. I'm kind of wimping out, because a Texas rig can do a lot of things. Right? A Texas rigged worm, a Texas rigged creature bait, and I know that. So I'm totally wimping out here out of my top 5 so that I can diversify a little bit. But Texas rig, we're gonna take the same hook, but we're gonna take a 3/16 ounce weight and put that on the line first, then tie on the hook. Okay, so they sit like that on the line. Then it's up to you if you want to go the curly tail worm route or the creature bait route. Either way, in a pond situation, I lean towards a downsized version of what I would throw out on a regular lake, on a big lake. So, curly tail worm, this is a 7-inch worm. This is a big bite worm. Another great one would be a 7-inch power worm. But that size worm, again, rigs up perfectly on that same hook. We're going for the best bang for the buck here. You can do all these things on one pack of hooks. And we're talking about baits that will catch them anywhere. So a 7-inch worm or a smaller creature bait. You guys know how much I like to pack a slim, but this is the 3.5-inch instead of the 4-inch. Just a little bit smaller profile there. So either one of these, that's how I kind of diversified and wimped out of my top 5. But either the 7-inch curly tail or the small downsized creature are so deadly on a Texas rig. Next one is, we're going to end with topwater because I've got some specifics there. Let's go right here. The next one is a chatterbait. This is a jackhammer chatterbait. If you're familiar with it, it is the top of chatterbaits. You pay for it. It is an expensive bait. It's a pricey bait. And it's big. But it is an amazing fish catching bait. Do you need to spend that kind of money for a pond fishing chatterbait? Nope. And that's how we get over here. Now, check out this guy. Here's a jackhammer. Here is a mini max. Look at the hook size difference. Can you see them? Jackhammer, mini max. Way, way, way smaller. Look at the length of the hook. Way smaller profile. Here's the cool thing. So the traditional chatterbait was a great bait. But for pond fishing, I like a little smaller profile. The problem is, a lot of the little tiny chatterbaits are bladed jigs, because there's lots of knockoffs of a chatterbait now. A lot of the small bladed jigs are junk. They don't have good hooks in them. They don't have great action. It's really disappointing. It's like they know there's a lot of pond guys, but they build junk for them. They don't take the time to build a proper bait. Well, Z-Man finally did. So it's a downsized bait, amazing colors, strong snap, and even though it's little, it is a stout hook. And I applaud these guys for building this thing. This Mini Max is no joke. I'm using the exact same trailer, that Big Bite Kamikaze, but it's the smaller size. It's the 3.75 size. Look at this. It's less expensive. It's like $1 more than a regular chatterbait. It's way less expensive than a jackhammer. Downsized profile, perfect for fishing in a pond, and you didn't give up anything. You've got a stout hook, a solid bait, very quick to start vibrating, and a killer profile. The chatterbait is one of the best pond baits of all time. If you want to cover water, if you've got a little rowboat or a kayak or a canoe in your pond and you can cover water, or you've got a clean shoreline where you can walk and just fire that chatterbait ahead, man, you can catch big ones on a chatterbait. The only time that this isn't in my game is if it's a pond where I don't have a lot of access. You know, I've got a spot that I can walk up to and I can cast from there. I might make a cast or two with the chatterbait, but most of my time is spent with either a Senko or the creature bait or the worm, because I can throw here, work it back, throw right next to it, work it back, throw right next to it, work it back, right? I'm maximizing my space. Whereas a chatterbait, you're like, and you're done, you're out of there. So if I don't have a large area to fish, I stick to those slower baits and really pick it apart. If I can cover ground, take that chatterbait and go, because you can get some really big bites. That brings us to the last one, and again, focused on really big bites. The number 5, and they're in no particular order, but the number 5 bait of all time for fishing in a pond is a topwater. And again, I'm fudging a little because I couldn't decide between a frog and a popper. The reason why is that ponds are diverse. In some ponds, if I walk up, popper's not even an option. I have to throw a frog. You go to the next pond, there's not any grass in sight. I'm gonna turn to the popper. But one of those two baits is the deal. And I grabbed 3 here. I grabbed 2 frogs because I'm so fanatical about a frog, but let's start with the popper. That's the little river to sea popper right there. The bubble pop is a great downsized version of a traditional popper. So it's a slightly smaller popper, great colors, great hooks, it's affordable, and that's a killer option for pond fishing. Fish it along the shore, throw right up against cover and just pop and just let it sit. Pop, pop, let it sit. You could throw it out in the open, same thing. But the neat thing, and most people don't realize this, is that you can also walk a popper. Not all poppers, but a good one. A good popper, if you're very subtle with that rod tip, they'll walk just like a big walking bait. They are far more universal than people realize. So a downsized popper is a deadly option in a pond. And then last but not least is the frog. And I couldn't grab just one because I love frog fishing. I'm fanatical about it, right? I have boxes and boxes of frogs because I never want to have just one. So I grabbed 2, the Jackal Kiara and then the smaller Spro Bronzeye, but not a 65. It's downsized, right? And in the video description, I'm gonna link all these baits, the exact hook, my favorite colors, the exact frogs, all of it for you, as well as some really good budget gear. Because again, we're not trying to break the bank here. We want you to get out there and have a blast. So there are some good budget, affordable rods that are light years above the gear of the past, where you don't have to spend a fortune and you can have a legitimate frog rod. Or you can grab a universal rod that'll throw a Senko, a Fluke, a Texas rig, a chatterbait. You could throw all that on one rod. So we'll link those too. But these downsized frogs, the key is downsized. They're not that much bigger than the popper. You see that? So it's a good downsized and always in a bluegill type color, unless you know for a fact that your pond has shad or shiners or something in it and you can diversify, throw some different things at them. But if you don't know, general rule of thumb, every pond in the country, bluegill is a player. So always start there. But that frog, you can throw it in the thickest stuff, you can throw it in the open water, you can just pop it along, or you can learn to walk a frog. We've got videos dedicated to that too, to teach you how to walk it right on the surface like a traditional topwater walking bait. And a frog is an amazing way to catch big ones in a pond. Guys, I hope this helps you. There are so many people fishing ponds, fishing rivers, fishing from the bank, and we don't want you to feel neglected. We do all of those different types of fishing ourselves. So even though the vast majority of our time is spent on the bass boat these days, we're very familiar with all those different styles of fishing, and we wanted to give you something very specific that would help you dial in your fishing and catch more fish the next time you head out to a small water. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.